हेलो दोस्तों, दिस इज बरकतुल। वेलकम टू हैक फॉर कोड। सो यार, आज हमारे साथ है अर्नब सेन। ही इज एन फॉर्मर SWE intern at Google. Hi Arnab, how you doing and would you like to introduce yourself please?
Sure. Hey everyone. I'm Arnab San. I'm currently in my final year at IST Shipur. I'm pursuing BTech in Computer Science and Engineering. I'm really passionate about open source, and I have done a lot of open source contributions. In my past, I was a Summer of Bitcoin Fellow, and I contributed to the Bitcoin Core project. Apart from that, I've interned at a bunch of remote startups. My last internship was at CypherOp. It's a Web3-based startup from Singapore, and I'm currently interning at this startup called Geometry, which I got through this XROS fellowship. And also last summer, I interned at Google, and I think that will be the main topic of discussion for today's podcast. Am I right?
Thank you for the great introduction. Like, it's great to have you as a speaker, as our guest. Let's just deep dive into your experience as a SW intern at Google, right? So can you tell us about your experience as a SW intern at Google? Like, what projects did you work on, and what did you learn during your internships, something like that?
To start with my experience, first of all, it was amazing for me because I always had a dream, even before I joined college, to work at Google. I remember watching this one documentary about the early founders of Google, and since then I always thought what it would be like to work at an organization like Google. And it came true. I got the first-hand experience of the culture at Google because of my internship. The project that I worked on was, I was in the part of the team called Google Ads, and I was working for an internal tooling system, and my main project was to build a notification service for that tooling system. So it was kind of like we have Gmail. So I used the Gmail backend for building a similar notification system at during my internship period. So yeah, and the tech stack was mainly Java, AngularJS, and yeah, that's it. Because other thing is there were frameworks as well, but those frameworks are proprietary to Google. Like, Google has all these internal tools and stuff. So yeah, the main language was Java, and for the front end we had AngularJS.
Sounds like you had an exciting internship, right? So
Yeah.
have one question, like, what qualifications and skills do you believe are important for aspiring SWE interns at Google to possess?
I think the company Google usually looks like through their application round. They usually look for folks who have good problem-solving skills and a good technical background. And if you have these two things, you are perfectly eligible for working at Google as a SWE intern, as a software developer, or even as an application, a product manager, the APM roles that Google have.
That's great. Like, aspiring SWE interns would love to hear more about the qualifications and skills that you believe are important. So how did you go about preparing for the SWE internship interview process at Google? Like, can you share any tips or strategies that helped you succeed?
Yeah, sure. My personal experience, I'm just going to share my personal experience, how I did. So the first thing that I did was, I had a very short period to prepare for the Google interview actually. I had 7 days because after I applied, I did not have much hope to get an OA link or an interview link. So it was 2 months passed by, and then I got a mail suddenly that I have my interview scheduled for the next week. So in those 7 days, what I did was I mainly looked at the past experience of Google interviews, and what I noticed was that Google has a very much fondness towards concepts like DP, graphs, tricky binary search questions and all. So once I went through all the basic data structures and algorithms, I put more priority on DP graphs and all this topic. And the way I did it was I prepared them through LeetCode. I used the LeetCode. At that time, I bought the LeetCode Premium, and so that I could solve all the questions. And yeah, I mainly use LeetCode. I also just prefer sticking to single platform. But sometimes some problems were available on different platforms. I would like check out Gig for Gigs and others, but mainly I stick to lead code for preparing. And those are mainly the stuffs that I for particularly for SWE internships, like SWE internship interviews. I think that's enough. Like preparing lead code, medium hard questions, and specifically focusing on concepts like DP, graphs, binary search, slide windows, yeah, those things.
Yeah, interesting. So, technical and behavioral questions during the interview can be tough. Like, can you share any specific example of questions you were asked and how you approached answering them? Like, any tips or techniques that helped you excel in your interviews?
Sure. Just to point out, if you're applying for internships, you don't get behavioral rounds. You just have to data structure based rounds. That's it. And prior to that, you might have OA rounds and technical technical screening rounds, like phone screening rounds. But for the interview, it's mainly they stick to DSA based questions. If you're applying for full time, then you get asked this behavioral, or at Google they call them Googliness rounds.
Okay.
So yeah. Apart from that, coming to the second question, which was like how to tackle the question during an interview. What I did was that, so a lot of people usually say that first try the brute force solution, then try to optimize the solution. But the thing is, at Google the interviews are like for 45 minutes only, and you will be asked two questions. Both of them can be medium hard difficulty. So if you go from a brute force solution, you code that out, then you try to think of an optimal solution, then you code that out. That in itself will take a lot of time. So what they prefer is that if you can reach the optimal solution as early as possible, the better it is. So usually what I would do is I would try to tell them the brute force solution that, hey, this is how I can brute force it, and this will be the time complexity. Usually the brute force solution will have time complexity of an exponential. Specifically for the questions like DP and graphs, it will be exponential or order of much polynomial time. And to bring it into a linear or logarithmic complexity, I would say like, okay, what are my this is the algorithm for the brute force solution. Now let's try to think of the more optimal solution, and then I would think of how I can optimize my solution. Maybe memorize the solution, or find some way in which let's say I can just sort it out, and maybe a greedy approach, or let's say the solution is something mathematical or something. So that's how I would usually target it. My focus was to make sure that I can get to the optimal solution as early as possible, maybe within 10 minutes after the question was asked to me, and in the next 10 minutes try to code that solution in the editor that they gave us, and at the same time try to explain your time complexity and as well as space complexity, and do a dry run of the test cases. So that's how I usually target. I prepared how to target the interview question specifically for Google, and it also applies to most of the big companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Adobe. I looked at their interview experiences, and it's pretty much similar. So yeah, you can try. So if you're applying to any of these companies, you can try the same. Focus. First of all, make sure that you have an understanding of the question. Ask clarifying questions, and once that's done, come up with if you cannot think of a good optimal solution on top of your mind, just tell the brute force solution, and in back of your mind keep thinking of the optimal solution, and then explain your optimal solution, and then code that solution. So yeah, that would be like the process.
That's indeed a great point you have pointed. Data structure and algorithms are key areas of focus for Google interviews, right? So can you share how you prepared for these types of technical questions? Before the interview, how was your preparation strategies? Can you please share that, if you have followed any specific resources or any strategies that helped you in excel in these aspects of your interview process?
Sure. So I like to I have this one kind of principle that I like to stick to one particular thing. And so even when preparing for DSA, I stick to two resources. One was the book called CLRS, The Introduction to Algorithm. It's kind of like the Bible of data structures and algorithm. I studied that from my first year of college, and I continued studying that book. I would revise the chapters again and again and again. The reason being, once you stick to a particular resource, you know the end, like the which chapter has what particular thing. So let's say if I forget how a binary search tree works or something, I know exactly in which chapter it was written. I would just quickly go through that, and I just refresh in my mind. That's why I always prefer sticking to one particular material. So that was one book, and there is this another amazing course of MIT. The course is MIT 6006 Introduction to Algorithm, and they actually follow the textbook, the Introduction to Algorithm, as their book as well, in the coursework as well. So I used to parallelly follow them. So like let's say I studied like I watched a video on let's say time complexities, or like how first video is about how to deal with time complexities, and then I would read that chapter on time complex, like on that the first chapter of CLRS. Then parallelly I would do that. Even the question, like I would also attempt solving the questions at the back of CLRS. Like there are many solutions available online, so then I would try to solve them, come up with my own approaches, and then check out the solution that's available online. So I primarily stick to, like, for the foundation, for the basic data structures and algorithm knowledge, these were my two things, like resources. The CLRS book, which by the way is available for free, like a PDF version is available online as well. But I would highly suggest you get that book because it's amazing. And the second one is the MIT coursework. And I think they have also released a newer version. Like there was an old semester, it was pretty old, and then they released another new semester video series. So in either of them will work. I prefer the old one. And yeah, so these two. And while preparing, as I said, I followed LeetCode. Again, I stick to one particular platform. The reason being, what I realized was that even previously when I was solving, like when I was in the initial years of like first and second years, I would try to solve questions from different platforms. And what I noticed was that I would be like, the thing is, these platforms all have the similar questions, just in a twisted fashion. Like the story is twisted or something. So I would just end up solving the same question in different platform, and like I may have solved 10 questions, but at the end, at the basic, like I have solved questions from two different concepts only. So that's why I stick to a single platform. And LeetCode kind of has like the number of questions in LeetCode is much less compared to the other platforms like Coding Ninjas and HackForCode. They have a lot of problems. So I thought of like sticking to LeetCode and like solving all different kinds of problems in that platform, because a single platform will not have two same questions but different words, something, right? So that's why I preferred just stick to LeetCode. And yeah, I got the premium, but I think in like even today I would not say that premium is that much going to be worth it. Like if you're a student and you don't want to spend a lot of money, it's totally fine. Like this was 2 years back, and like most of the right now all the videos have YouTube solutions. Some of the other YouTuber has actually posted a solution of these questions, so those are good enough. But previously when I was preparing, I did not find proper solutions, and the editorials in LeetCode was locked. So for that reason I took the premium version. But again, if you take the premium, it's going to be worth it. It's around like 10,000 for Indian users. So like
for 1 month or a year?
No, for a year.
Okay.
For 1 month, it's I think around like 300. I'm not sure. I won't say. So, but for 1 year, it was around 10,000. And my thought process was that if, let's say, so I took it before my internship season began. So my thought process was, if I got an internship at like big companies like Google or something, the salary that I would get by the end of the month and the amount that I had to pay for LeetCode premium, that would be just a fraction of the salary, right?
Yeah.
So it would be a good investment. And even if I didn't get a job, I would have the entire year of LeetCode premium to practice, and by the end of that year, I will be at a much better state to get a good opportunity. And again, that 1 year period of basically that amount that's invested for that 1 year of LeetCode premium will still be worth it by the end. So yeah, it's going to be worth it by the end. But if you still have some financial issues, it's totally fine. You can just use any other platforms online. It was just what I did.
Absolutely, yeah, interesting. So we will also put all the links of the resources you just pointed out in the description. So if you want to go through any of the courses or want to buy any of these books, just Arnab has said, you can just go to the description and check it out. So like, what do you think, like what are some common mistakes that candidates make during the SWE internship preparation. Like as you have said कि वो लोग क्या करते हैं कि लीड कोड में भी करते हैं, गिग्स और गिग्स में भी करते हैं, और हैकर रैंक पे भी करते हैं, कोडिंग इंजर्स में भी करते हैं. सो ये एक हो गया. बट लाइक आर देयर एनी मोर कॉमन mistakes they are making, and if yes, then how can they avoid them? Any tips?
So yeah, I think one big mistake was giving up. A lot of personally, I've seen a lot of my juniors, and they have this kind of mindset that they got an interview call, and this is just not just it's not just for Google, but for all companies in general, by the way. They get an interview call and they're like, "Bhaiya, I'm not very prepared, so should I just skip this time and apply it next time?" And like a lot of, I tell them not to do that. And my reasoning behind that is that, let's say you give the interview and you fail miserably. There is nothing to lose, right? Like they're not going to charge you that for, hey, you wasted our time, give us 500 rupees. They're not going to do that anything. So why not have that one interview experience, at hand? What might happen is that, let's say they ask you questions. Let's say you're very worried that you have not prepared DP and graph, but you have a good strong hold on binary search and other topics, and you did not apply thinking that they will ask question on DP and graph. What if that particular day, it may be just pure coincidence that they ask you questions on binary search, and you actually have those questions in mind. So it is always going to be like, it's there's this very famous quote of Michael Scott from The Office, like, you miss all the shots that you don't take. Like you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So yeah, so like I would say, give it a shot, see what happens. If it goes bad, it's fine. There are many other companies. You can just apply. You can use that interview experience that you had. You can work on yourself, and then prepare much better way. You can know what your weaknesses are, and if you get, that's amazing. I mean, that's what we're looking for. So don't give up even before you are applying. So that's one of the first thing. I've seen a lot of my juniors do the mistake. They don't apply. They don't apply because thinking that they are not prepared enough, and they don't give their interviews. And yeah, the second thing that I would say is, during preparation, a lot of people don't focus on mock interviews. The thing is, normal when you're solving questions on on LeetCode or any of this platform, while you're at home and you're listening to music and you're solving and you're just having fun, that's a different environment. When you're sitting in front of your laptop and there is a person sitting on the other end who is constantly judging you for every keystroke, that's a totally different environment. And a lot of it's like a lot of people have public speaking anxiety. Similarly, a lot of people have interview anxiety, and the only way to get rid of those nervousness and anxiety is during an interview is to put mock interviews. Like it's very basic. Like if like biologically speaking, nervousness happens because your body is like at an uncomfortable situation and doesn't know what to do, right? So if you're not very good at public speaking and you go up on a stage, you feel nervousness, your hands shiver and everything, you sweat up a lot because your body is very uncomfortable. And similarly, like if let's say you're talking to your crush and you're very nervous, it's because you don't do that often. So the solution is to always put yourself in that situation more and more. Like if you want to be good at public speaking, just go up on stage and speak. And once you keep doing that, you're going to get better. Similarly, if you are afraid of talking to your crush, just go ahead and talk to her, him, or whatever. Same thing for the interviews as well. Like if you are afraid of giving interviews, if you don't if you're not very sure like how you're going to perform, if your brain doesn't, if you have brain fog during an interview, try to give a lot of mock interviews. You can just reach out to your seniors. You can ask them. Like I personally do a lot of mock interviews for my juniors. You will find seniors like that. You can reach out to them on LinkedIn. You can, a lot of people these days does free mock interviews. There's also a great platform called Ramp, where like you can, it's a free platform where I personally give like 3-4 mock interviews. And so if you don't have any CVs or any connections on LinkedIn, you can just go over and sign up on Ramp and give free interviews. And once you start giving these mock interviews, you will know exactly where you are lacking, like what are your weaknesses are. Like you might see that, okay, I'm lacking when I have to write code. So you can, while you're preparing, you can just imagine that you're in an interview and prepare that particular situation, like of writing code when someone, when another person is looking at you. or let's say you're lacking at explaining your code, then what you can do is you can write a code, explain it to your friends, explain it to your peers, and see if they understand your code or not. So the more mock interviews you give, the more you know your weaknesses, and better you can work on them. Then on the actual day, when you have your actual interview, you will feel very comfortable. You're going to be much more. You're going to be able to put a lot of focus on the question, explain the question much better, explain the solution much better way, and you will give a much better job at an interview. So I think mock interviews is really important, and a lot of people usually don't focus on that. It's after they give their first interview they realize how important mock interviews are, because they they have a very bad experience in the first interview. Like I also had a very bad first interview experience.
Okay, absolutely. That's indeed a very good point. Like giving mock interviews is important. So, what do you think? How important is networking for landing an internship at Google? Like, did you utilize any networking strategies during your application process?
The only time you would need is that when you are need that you would be like when you're asking for referral. That's I feel the only time, because after that the balls are on your court. It's only you. For referral, if you have good networking opportunity, like if you have good networks and on LinkedIn or anything, you can reach out to them much better. Okay, but I still feel that like it's not worth it. Like if you're in the second year or third year, I wouldn't say like don't spend a lot of time trying to have a lot of connections or like spend on this one. Instead, build your profile. The reason is even the employees get benefited from giving a good referral. So like if I as an employee refer you, and you get a job at Google, I'm going to get some amount. So the employees are always looking for someone who has a much better chance of converting that referral to an actual offer. So if you instead work on building your skills, and then you reach out to people on LinkedIn saying that, hey, I have this skills, this is my resume, like these are my ratings on this particular coding platform. Like since Google focuses on DSA based questions, like DSA based technical rounds, if you have good ratings on, or if you have solved a lot of questions on like DSA questions on different platforms like HackForCode, LeetCode, that builds a good profile, right? So you can tell them that, hey, I've solved 800 questions in LeetCode and have good understanding of all the DSA concepts. Will you be down to refer me? And 90% of the time they will be, because why not? If you're a good candidate, why won't they refer? Because at the end of the day, they will also get paid for that, right?
Right.
So I would say companies have made it very easy for made the referral like opportunity very easy. So you can always reach out to people on LinkedIn. Your prime focus should be on building your skills and building your resume, and like networking baad mein bhi ho jayega. So like don't worry about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Bilkul sahi. So let's come to the resume part, right? Building a portfolio, a strong resume. So what is a strong resume for you? Like, can you share any advice or tips for crafting a strong resume and cover letter, especially for applying an internship at Google, or you can say FANG companies like that?
Right. So yeah, I think like your resume is like the first thing that a recruiter or a hiring manager will look at you is your resume, right? So even if you're very skilled, even you're very like you're a top tier coder, if you do not have if you have a poor resume, you're not going to get selected even for the initial rounds, right? So no matter how much skilled you are, you need to have a kick-ass resume, so that you even go to the initial stages of interviews, and then you can show off your skills actually, right? So for that, resume is very important. And the thing is, like if you're applying for like as an intern, what I would suggest is follow the basic format. Like have your education, have your projects. If you have any work experience, put that. Your technical skills, and if you have good, if you have some achievements, put them. And if you always, like if you're applying for, I always have this like follow this thing that like craft your resume specifically for the companies that you're applying. So let's say if you're applying for a remote startup based companies, focus a lot on your projects and your open source experience and your past work experience. If you're applying for companies like Google, focus on a lot of DSA skills, because that's what they're going to look at, right? Have a proper overall like resume. And my tips would be that like first of all, don't use Word for creating resumes. I made that mistake in my first year. And like I'm not saying the thing is like there are people who have good resumes but have made it in Word, but a majority of people do not have that good of a resume if they make use Word. A good alternative is using something like LaTeX. There are plenty of online platforms where you can build your resume using LaTeX, and the advantage is that there are lots of templates. Like one of the templates that I used to follow was called DDCD. It's a very popular template, especially in this software domain. It's like a 2-column resume, and it has work experience, projects, and everything. It looks very crisp, looks very professional. So that's one template that you can use. What I did was in my third year I stick to like LaTeX, but later on I moved to an online free tool called FluCV.com. The reason being, like if you work with LaTeX, you will know that eventually it becomes very difficult to maintain. Like if you have to add something, or if you want to change the line width a little bit, those customizations become very difficult to maintain and using something like LaTeX. So I went to this tool called FluCV. It has a lot of good templates, and I used them. Like I used one of these templates, and I drafted my resume with that. Also, my resume is public. You can check it out at like arnabsen.dev/resume. I think you can put it in the description as well.
Absolutely. Please check it out.
Yeah. So apart from that, another thing that again, this is my personal favorite opinion. I initially had a 2-column resume, but later on I moved on to a single-column resume. The reason being, what happened was that it's very difficult to maintain a uniformness with 2-column resume. Like if I make a good project, my project section becomes longer and my left section becomes smaller, so it doesn't look that good. It looks like a white patch at the left corner. But with the single-column resume, it looks very streamlined, and there is a lot more breathing space, so it becomes very easy to read. And regarding what else? One more thing. A lot of people I see say that as an intern you should have just 1-page resume. Well, obviously you cannot just put a lot of fancy work and make your resume long. Like it doesn't make any sense. It has to be crisp. But if you have a lot of achievements, if you have a lot of work experience or open source, or if there's a lot of stuff that you wanted to showcase, that you want to put that showcases your skill, go for a 2-page resume. It's absolutely fine. I personally asked my recruiter at Google if it's okay to have a 2-page resume. I got it reviewed by my my manager, my Google team leads, and everyone agreed that it's absolutely fine, even if it's a fresher, to have a 2-page resume if there is stuff in your resume. Like otherwise you just make half of the like 1 page of the resume you just fill half, and in the other page you fill another half. That not like that, but like if you have a complete resume, taking 2 pages is absolutely fine. The reason I'm saying this because I recently saw one of my juniors. There's not a lot of open source work and a lot of projects. He wanted to include everything, and he cramped everything in just one resume, and it looked really bad. So I asked him to create a 2-page resume, and then the 2-page resume looked much cleaner and much more crisp and much professional, by the way. So it's absolutely fine to go for a 2-page resume. And there are certain tips that I always give to my juniors. Those will be like a lot of my juniors say that they especially when they're applying for internships, they don't have work experience, right? Because there is this weird cycle, right? For getting into internships, you need to have experience, right. And to get experience, you need to have internship. So there is this one deadlock situation. Yes. The one tip that I always give them is that you can always do open source work. And what happens is, let's say you pick an organization, so you can always do this, like programs like GSOC, MLH, some of Bitcoin, and all those stuff that you can put them as work experience. But if you did not get into them, you can still pick a project under an organization, spend 1-2 months working on that particular project, and by the end of these 2 months, you will have enough PRs, enough contributions that you can put it in a like may not be in a experience section, but you can put at least in an open source experience. If you want to specify much better way, you can put it like you have an open source experience, you worked on this particular organization, you have this many PRs. And I personally feel that if you spend 2 months working on an open source project, and 2 months working on open source project is much difficult than 2 months doing a 2-month internship. Because during an internship, you always have your mentors and everyone. You can just ask them questions and get a response. Right. But in open source, you don't have that option, right? You have to make a comment, and you have to wait when the maintainer will be free and to reply your comment. So like go ahead with open source. In your second year, you have a lot of time. You can spend a lot of time. You can take like every day you can spend like 1 hour or 2 hours trying to understand the code base and what in what particular area you can have those make those contributions. That would be a good way to fill your resume. And another thing is like regarding the achievement section, a lot of my juniors, they have some like a blank achievement section. What I suggest them is like continuously keep participating in contests online, be it hackathons, be it coding contests. And so let's say if you participate in like just to give an example, let's say a particular student has participated in a bunch of lead code contests, and the best rank that they have got in a lead code weekly is something like 7,000 or something. So you can put that in your resume, by the way, because that's your personal achievement, right? It might not be very good, it may be very impressive, but that's still your achievement. So if you have compared two resumes, on one side, if one particular person has ranks like ranked 7,000 in lead code weekly, rank XYZ in GFG contest, and also on the other hand, the other person does not have any achievements. Obviously the first person's resume looks much better, because the recruiter will, when they will look at the resume, they will look at, okay, at least this particular kid is actively participating in contest, and this one is not participating in contest because they have not provided any rank. But in reality, maybe both of them are participating in contest, just this particular person put them in their resume and the other guy just missed that. So that's why participate in contest. You can always participate in college fests as well. The reason is that the number of participation in college competition is very less, right? So it's very easy to get those 2-digit or single-digit ranks. And I remember I used to participate in contests in my colleges, in other colleges online, because most of these contests are online, right? So I just always participate in them, and I would put those ranks, because ranks like rank third in this particular contest, it looks very flashy. The number looks, it really looks very impressive. So always participate in contests, and whatever is your best rank at that point, just put it there. Next time, if you get a better rank, just swap out the numbers. That's it. And that way your resume will at least look full. It's going to look much it's not going to look empty, right? And for the projects, I would say that if you're in the first year or second year, you have a lot of time. You can just learn a particular domain and try to come up with innovative ideas. If you don't have that much of ideas, I always give this suggestion that participate in hackathons. The reason being, let's say for example, if I just at this point, if I ask you to think of anything, you're not going to think of anything, right? You just mind will be blank, like what is Arnab asking me to think about. But if I ask you to think of a particular fruit, you're going to think of like different fruits like mango or apple or something. So this is what happens when you participate in hackathons. Hackathons have a particular theme, right? So sometimes the theme is mental well-being or all these things. So whenever you're thinking on terms of a particular theme, new ideas come through. So at that time, it doesn't like when you build projects around those themes, in your resume, the project looks very unique, very innovative. Otherwise, every other people has, this Amazon clone or Netflix clone or all this kind of, very projects that are, a lot of YouTubers actually make. So try to participate in hackathons and build unique and innovative projects. And overall, if you have all these points in mind, I think you will have a very, a very good resume. And if you you can also improve your resume keeping these points in mind.
Absolutely. So you got a PPO from Google, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations on receiving a PPO. Can you share your experience and insights, like how you were able to secure a PPO offer?
Yeah. I personally feel securing a PPO is not that difficult if you're at least from a development background. All you have to do is just work diligently. That's it. And like specifically at Google, it was very easy because the mentors are really amazing. Like they are always there to help you out, and obviously you have to put your work because the thing is, as an intern, you're expected to write code the most. So I remember I was reading this one blog, and there they say the life journey of a software developer is like this: the higher in the ranks that you go, the less code you write. Like if you think of a team lead or a team manager, they write the least code. They focus mostly on reviewing your code and other. So on the other end, there are interns. So as an intern, you have to write the most number of code. So out of there are obviously communication skills and all that points are important, but the most important thing that you will be judged on is going to be how good quality code you've written, how impactful code you've written. So that's the first thing, and your project is the main priority. So for all those 10 weeks that you have, your first priority should be to work on the project, get the design doc ready, start working on the initial prototyping, get your reviews as quickly as possible. So yeah, so I actually read this one blog about software development, journey of a software developer, and it said that the more you promote yourself as a software developer, you move from a intern to a developer to a SD3 and so on to a managerial position, the less number of lines of code that you write. So basically, your lead will be much more focused on reviewing your code. So on the other end, there's you as an intern, so you have to write the most number of lines of code. The main idea is that when you're interning, in that period of like 10 weeks, the first priority should be your project, and you have to prepare the design doc, get your design doc reviewed, start building a prototype of the project, start building focus on the there are, in what happens at Google is that there are two evaluations that happen. One is mid-eval and then the end evaluation. So if you got any feedback in the mid-evaluation, keep them in mind during the rest of the period, so that by the end of the end evaluation, you have those points checked. So that will be the first priority. Apart from that, the thing is the time is very less. 10 weeks, it's not that not that long of a time, because in that period of time you have to understand the code base, and then you have to build the project. And a lot of people think that only in startups people get to work on very high-end projects. But I personally feel like even at working at Google, the project that we were given was really impactful, because the motivation system that I built that got deployed the day by the end of the week that I left, and people are still using that. So that's I feel they don't treat especially at Google, what happens is they don't treat interns as an intern, they just treat them like a fellow colleague. So it feels really good that way. So you have a lot of responsibility as well, right? So but if you are stuck at any point, you can always ask your host, you can always ask the team. Especially at Google, I think they have their own Stack Overflow and a lot of things. So let's say you're using the framework that I'm using at Google. There are Googlers who build that framework, so I can just directly reach out to them, the one who built that particular framework. So it becomes very easy to actually get your doubts resolved and start working and continue working on the project. But at the same time, always have fun, right? Otherwise you will get burnt out really quickly,
right?
So make sure you have fun, but at the same time, your priority should be, because it's much easier to get a PPO than to apply, go through the, because at Google, if you look at the FTE process, they have 5 interviews and then a Googliness round. So that's really difficult to track. So I would say it's much better to get a PPO. If you can put your efforts in the 10 weeks, you're sure to get a PPO.
Absolutely. So let's so here's the last question for you. You have enough experiences to share, but unfortunately we have to conclude this with a last question. What was the most valuable lesson or piece of advice you learned during your internship, and or you can say when you were applying at Google and interning there, that you would like to share with the audience or with the aspiring interns who want to join Google, or you can say any other startups as interns. There are two things that I would like to say. First, during the internship process, there will be a lot of time when you will face blank. The first day, first week, you will get the project, and the first thing will be thought ये मैं कैसे करूँ? How is this going to be possible? But the thing is, have faith. You my idea would be to break down. You have a discussion with your host and break down that that entire process into small milestones. So that's what I did in my first. By the end of the first week, I built week 1 I'm going to do this, week 2 I'm going to do this, week 3 I'm going to do this. That way, I'm not worried about what's going to happen by the 10th week. I'm just worried about what's going to happen by the end of this week, and that reduces the stress level a lot, and you can actually focus on the stuff. And eventually, when you are midweek, you can see the entire picture. You can see all the stuff building up in itself. So, and I think this is true for even when you become a software developer. Even today, when every time I'm working on a new project, initially the thing is I have no clue of how it's going to work.
but eventually I build one component, I build another component, I put them together, and eventually it starts building up. And yeah, a lot of software development is just about not giving up. Just try to break things down. It's called modularity, right? If you have concepts of software development itself, like break it down into small pieces, tackle them individually, and then you can put them together, and that will bring the solution. So that's the first thing that I learned, especially during my internship, because that was the first time working at a big project, big organization. The second thing that was a big life lesson for me during the application was, a lot of people usually, when you're applying, like especially the second years and third years, when you apply, a lot of people will say that you have to work on your DSS skills, you have to work on your hard work, like you have to work on your communication skills, build your profile, build your resume, and all that stuff. But one big factor that plays is that luck. And I think a lot of fourth year and third year people who have gone through this will agree with me that the luck factor is big. That plays a big role. And the reason being that so like the first, like from my experience, during this, like after a couple of weeks, actually Microsoft has an opening called Microsoft Engage. So 2 years back, so like I applied for that, and Microsoft is the only big company that comes to my campus. Actually at that point of time, even Google did not come to my campus. It was a totally off-campus process that I took. So my goal was to at least get into Microsoft. And so I applied for the Engage, and I applied all these things, that whatever I said, like prepare, give mock interviews, study the past experience and everything. And I remember the exam was like 25 questions about OA rounds. Like the OA round was for 25 questions, MCQs, and a couple of coding rounds. And they went good. Like I was very confident, because after that I asked, because a lot of people, what they do is they start preparing in the summer vacation and then they apply for companies.
Right.
And Microsoft Engage happens before the summer vacation.
Yeah.
So a lot of my batchmates, they were not prepared. So when I asked them how did their exam go, they would say like, I left midway because I was not prepared. So I was feeling kind of confident that it's going to happen. And the next week, when the mails were rolling out, everyone got the mail except me, and I felt kind of depressed. Like, oh my god, Microsoft, that was my goal, and I did not get that. Then 2 months later, so after that, Microsoft Engage has this product building phase and everything. 2 months later, Microsoft again came. This time it was an on-site normal ground, not the Engage course, but the Microsoft on-site. I was like, this is my last opportunity and I have to do it. And this time the questions were like one OA round, and it had 2 questions. And the questions are, I would say, very easy, medium questions. The first question was on basic mathematics, probability type questions, and the second one was a string manipulation question. And I was done with those questions, the test cases match and everything. And I started preparing for the interviews, because what happens during college placement is that today you have the OA, tomorrow you will have the interview, and day after tomorrow you will have the result. So you have very less time to prepare for this. So I started preparing for the interview. Right. And the next day when the list came out, again, my name was not there. And even at that point, the reason I felt really bad was that even at that point I had worked very hard on my resume. Like I was one of the Summer of Bitcoin fellows. Like there were like 50 people chosen from around 10,000 applications. I was also a Corona Stuff fellow. There were like 24 people students selected from 50,000 applications. My DSS skills were like, I reached expert in my 3rd semester. Like 4 courses expert in my 3rd semester. And so I had a good like a profile. So I felt at least that I would get into the interview round. Right. But that did not happen. So at that point I was really lost all hopes. But bunch of days later, when I got my mail for the Google interviews, I at that point I was not very excited, because I knew that I learned my lesson, that no matter how prepared you are, if luck is not on your side, you're not going to get the job. So even when I had the Google interview opportunity at hand, I was like, okay, whatever's going to happen, that will happen. Jo hoga dekha jayega. And so I applied for the I gave the interviews, and 2 months passed by. I had no responses from them. All the folks, all my batchmates who applied, who gave the interviews with me, they all got their offers and everything. Okay. So I was starting to kind of give up hope. And then I remember one morning, it was I think it was October. It was the first week of October. It was actually the first day of Durga Puja. So I woke up, and I saw the mail that hey, you got like congratulations on your summer internship offer at Google. And at that point, my hand was like shaking, like, hey, like, is it really happening or am I just dreaming? And yeah, that was the best moment. Like I remember telling my mom, and she was doing puja at that time. It was the first day of puja, right? She was doing puja. She stopped the puja. She came back to me. She saw and she congratulated me, and it felt really good.
Yeah.
And the biggest lesson that I learned was that if that day I got the Microsoft offer, if that day, it's the second time I got the Microsoft offer, I might not even work hard for applying for Google, because
Right.
Microsoft was a goal, but Google was the dream, right?
Correct.
So that day, like when I was holding the offer at Google, there was this great words of Steve Jobs. He said that when you can only connect the dots looking backward, you cannot connect it looking forward.
Right.
So have faith that the dots will connect when you look back at them. So like वो था ना, like they say जो भी होता है भलाई के लिए होता है. And,
whatever happens
those
happens for a
words
reason.
happens for good. Yeah. So like I felt the true meaning of those words when I had that offer in my hand. So I think one thing that I would say to my juniors and everyone is that give your best, but not every time you can like expect for the best outcome.
Right.
But whatever outcome you get, remember that God has a plan for you. So if it's like everything becomes right at the end, if it's not right, it's not the end. Picture अभी बाकी है.
Right, बिल्कुल. Picture अभी बाकी है मेरे दोस्त. It was a very inspiring story. Like I also got a goosebumps in my hand. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining, Arnab. Like it was a pleasure talking with you, and we hope to have you back on the podcast in the future. That time we will be doing an offline podcast, I would say. Like,
Sure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future podcast, and we will see you next time.